Welcome to Value Plays Only, where Finale Devastation is justifying Dryad Arbor. Today we have John, playing Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator and Bruse Tarl, Boorish Herder. This is a mid-range value deck looking to use Malcolm and Bruse to generate piles of treasures and cast some expensive wins. It can win with Glinthorn Buccaneer, Underworld Breach, or a Trickery Charm combo. His hand contains an Esper Sentinel, Enlightened Tutor, Intuition, Soul Ring, Savine's Reclamation, Teferi, Time Raveler, and Flooded Strand. Tyler is playing Dargo the Shipwrecker and Tymna the Weaver. This deck looks to loop Dargo with Relic Legends or Burgi and a Sacrifice Outlet, or it can win with Underworld Breach. His hand contains Goblin Engineer, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Curse Mirror, Dark Ritual, Mox Diamond, Arcane Signet, and Ancient Tomb. Dan is playing Kenrith, the Return King. This 5-color good stuff deck tries to leverage Kenrith's many abilities to assemble a Reanimator or Infinite Mana win. His hand contains a Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Ranger Captain of Eos, Silence, Flusterstorm, Pact of Negation, Tundra, and Misty Rainforest. Cammy is playing Kefka, Court Mage. This is a Grixis mid-range deck pretending to be a hand disruption deck. The deck can generate massive card advantage through Kefka before winning with Thassa's Oracle or Underworld Breach. Her hand contains Imperial Seal, Mystical Tutor, Scalding Tarn, Blood Crypt, and Ancient Tomb. Her London Mulligans are Volatile Stormdrake and Rite of Flame. And with that, let's see some value plays. John starts things off with a Flooded Strand. He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Tundra. He casts Esper Sentinel. John then passes the turn. Tyler plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He casts an Arcane Signet. Esper triggers and John draws. Tyler casts a Dragon's Rage Channeler. He then passes the turn. Dan plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Volcanic Island. He casts a Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. Dan passes the turn. Cammy plays a Scalding Tarn as land for turn. She pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Volcanic Island. She passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He takes 2 to cast Soul Ring. It resolves and John uses it to cast his commander, Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator. He goes to combat and swings Esper Sentinel at Cammy. She takes the damage, and John passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He casts a Goblin Engineer. It enters and triggers, searching up a Relic of Legends into his grave. Tyler passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He goes to combat and swings Ragavan at John. He takes the damage, and Ragavan triggers, making a treasure and exiling Mana Vault off the top of John's library. In his second main phase, Dan plays a Tundra as land for turn. He casts a Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff. He then casts Mana Vault from exile. Lotho and Esper trigger. John draws, and Dan loses a life and makes a treasure. Dan then passes the turn. In his end step, Cammy casts Mystical Tutor. Esper triggers and John draws. Tutor resolves and Cammy searches up a Wheel of Fortune to the top of her library. The turn then moves to Cammy. Cammy untaps and draws her wheel. She plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. She taps out to cast Wheel of Fortune. Esper triggers and John draws. Wheel of Fortune resolves. John shows the good hand he's losing, including Savine's Reclamation. Tyler then shows that he opted not to hold up Orcish Bowmasters and discards it. Everyone draws their new 7, and Cammy passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays a Marsh Flats as land for turn. He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Plateau. John casts his other commander, Bruse Tarl, Boorish Herder. It triggers to give Malcolm Double Strike and Lifelink. He goes to combat, swinging Malcolm at Dan. Dan takes first strike, and Malcolm triggers to make a treasure. He takes regular damage, and Malcolm triggers again. In his second main phase, John casts Mox Opal. Lotho triggers, and Dan loses a life and makes a treasure. He then casts Ranger Captain of Eos. He forgets to search up a 1-drop, and then casts Archivist of Ogma with his floating mana. John then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Polluted Delta as land for turn. He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Badlands. Ogma triggers to gain life and draw. Tyler casts Mox Opal. Esper triggers and John draws. Tyler then casts Esper Sentinel. Lotho triggers to lose a life and make a treasure. It resolves and he casts Tainted Pact. It resolves and he starts exiling, looking for something to do about the current state of the board. He exiles 20 or so cards from the top of his library, finding Underworld Breach. He adds it to hand and casts it. The table pucker up as they need to find an answer. John asks if Dan has anything he can do about it. Dan says he can cast something to help John draw. He puts a Worldly Tutor on the stack. Both Esper's trigger and Dan pays for Tyler's. Seeing a win with how much mana Dan has, John opts to cast Mindbreak Trap, targeting Breach and Worldly Tutor. Dan is aghast at how John is turned against him. Tyler's Esper triggers. It is now that Tyler notices he should have a DRC trigger on Underworld Breach and puts it on the stack. He surveils a Wooded Foothills into his grave and then draws for Esper. With that, the spells are exiled. Tyler then casts Lion's Eye Diamond. DRC triggers to surveil Delny into his grave. He then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He casts a Soul Ring. 2 Esper's trigger. Tyler draws and Dan pays for John's. Dan then casts Voice of Victory. Lotho triggers to lose a life and make a treasure. Dan then casts Smothering Tithe. The table will clench their fists as they can do nothing under Voice of Victory. Tyler now remembers that he had to attack with Dragon's Rage Channeler and swings it at Dan for 3. Dan goes to combat, swinging Ragavan at Cammy. Ragavan triggers to make a treasure and exile Force of Will off the top of her library. Dan then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. Smothering Tithe triggers, Cammy pays. She plays a Luxury Suite as land for turn. Cammy casts an Orcish Bowmasters. It triggers to ping Lotho for 1, killing it. Cammy then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. Smothering Tithe triggers and Dan makes a treasure. John goes to combat swinging Malcolm and Bruse at Dan. Bruse triggers to give Malcolm double strike and lifelink. Dan takes the first strike damage and Malcolm makes a treasure. He takes regular damage and Malcolm triggers again. In his second main phase, John transmutes Muddle the Mixture. The table see flashes of Underworld Breach coming and leap to action. Tyler activates Goblin Engineer, sacrificing Mox Opal to return Cursed Mirror to the battlefield. It enters as a copy of Ranger Captain of Eos. It triggers to search up a greedy freebooter to hand. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw. Tithe and Bowmaster trigger. Bowmaster pings John's Esper Sentinel for 1, killing it. Dan then makes a treasure. Muddle the Mixture then resolves and John goes searching. Seeing the Ranger Captain, John looks for a card that can deal with the board without getting stopped. John searches up a Cyclonic Rift to hand. He plays a Volcanic Island as land for turn. John taps out to overload Cyclonic Rift. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. Tithe and Bowmaster trigger. Bowmaster pings Ragavan for 1, and then Dan makes a treasure. Cyclonic Rift then resolves, bouncing all non-land, non-John permanents. John then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. Tyler plays a Scalding Tarn as land for turn. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He pays life and cracks Scalding Tarn, fetching up a Sacred Foundry, into play untap, paying 2 life. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw. Tyler takes 2 to cast Arcane Signet. He then casts Esper Sentinel. He casts a Goblin Engineer again. It enters and triggers, searching up a Witchclaw Talisman into his grave. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw. Tyler passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He casts a Soul Ring. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. He recasts Voice of Victory. Dan then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. She pays life and cracks it, fetching up an Underground Sea. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw. She holds up mana and passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays a Polluted Delta as land for turn. He cracks his Ranger Captain of Eos, locking opponents out of casting non-creature spells this turn. He casts Mana Vault. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. John casts Jessica's Will, choosing both modes targeting Tyler. In response, Tyler is determined to make him work and cracks his Lion's Eye Diamond for 3 black mana, discarding his hand. Jessica's Will resolves and makes no mana, exiling Chain of Vapor, Mystical Tutor, and Scalding Tarn off the top of John's library. He now goes into the tank. Really banking on having that red mana, John flashes back Sevine's Reclamation from his grave, targeting Teferi Time Raveler. Teferi enters and John copies Sevine's, targeting Ranger Captain of Eos, returning it to the battlefield. John goes to combat, swinging Malcolm and Bruse at Dan. Bruse triggers to give Malcolm double strike and lifelink. Dan takes first strike and Malcolm triggers to make a treasure. He takes regular damage and Malcolm triggers again. In his second main phase, John pays a life and cracks his Polluted Delta, fetching up a Sacred Foundry, into play untap, paying 2 life. John casts a Time Twister. It resolves and everyone shuffles their hand and grave into the library and draws 7. John then casts Mystical Tutor. He searches up a Jessica's Will to the top of his library. John activates the -3 ability of Teferi to bounce Goblin Engineer and draw a card. He casts a Chrome Mox. It enters and he imprints Seagate Restoration. John casts Chain of Vapor, targeting his Mox Opal. He sacrifices a land, copying the chain to bounce Soul Ring and Mana Vault. John recasts Mox Opal. He recasts Mana Vault. He recasts Soul Ring. John recasts Jessica's Will, targeting Tyler. It actually resolves and John makes 7 red mana, and exiles Windfall, Esper Sentinel, and Intuition. Sadly, John only has red mana available, so he casts Shatter Scroll Smashing with X equals 4, killing Tyler's Esper Sentinel and Voice of Victory. John then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Command Tower as land for turn. He casts a Lotus Petal. He casts a Gamble. Under Teferi, the table looks at John. John points expectantly at his Ogma and passes priority. Gamble resolves and Tyler searches up a card into hand and randomly discards a card. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw a card. Tyler then casts Wishclaw Talisman. It enters and he taps out to cast Myrel, Shield of Argive. John checks his hand as Myrel resolves. Tyler then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays Exotic Orchard as land for turn. Dan casts a Mana Vault. Dan then casts the One Ring. John doesn't like his favorite punching bag getting away, but the One Ring resolves and Dan gains protection from everything, but mostly from John. He activates the One Ring to draw a card. Dan then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Mana Confluence as land for turn. Cammy casts Lotus Petal. Cammy casts her commander, Kefka, Court Mage. It enters and triggers. Everyone discards a land and Cammy draws 1 card. Cammy casts Culling the Weak, sacrificing Kefka as an additional cost. She has 4 black mana. Cammy spends some of her mana to cast Phyrexian Metamorph. It enters as a copy of Ranger Captain of Eos. Ranger Captain triggers to search up a Ragavan to hand. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw a card. Cammy then passes the turn. John untaps and in his upkeep, Cammy sacrifices Ranger Captain, locking John out of casting non-creature spells this turn. In his draw step, John takes 1 from his Mana Vault. John heads to combat, swinging Malcolm at Tyler and Bruse at Cammy. Bruse triggers to give Malcolm double strike and lifelink. Tyler takes first strike and Malcolm triggers to make a treasure. They take regular damage and Malcolm triggers again. In his second main phase, John activates the +1 loyalty ability of Teferi, giving his Sorcery's Flash. He then transmutes Muddle the Mixture for the second time this game. He goes searching for some out to Tyler's board under Ranger Captain, knowing he'll have nothing under Myrel. He searches up a Drannith Magistrate and casts it. Tyler sinks his head as John passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Bloodstained Mire as land for turn. Staring sadly at the Drannith Magistrate, He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Blood Crypt, into play untapped, paying 2 life. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw. Tyler activates Wishclaw Talisman. He goes searching and gives Wishclaw to Cammy. Tyler searches through his entire deck, trying to figure out how he can win through all the effects that are still in play. He gets his card, and Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw a card. He then casts Soul Partition, targeting Drannith Magistrate. Under my Rel, Partition resolves and Drannith is exiled. Tyler then taps out to cast Beseech the Mirror, bargaining Arcane Signet as an additional cost. It resolves and he searches up a Praetor's Grasp into exile, casting it for free. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw a card. Tyler targets Cammy. He searches her library for a card and exiles it face down. Tyler sadly has to pass the turn, unable to get there this turn. Dan untaps, and in his upkeep the One Ring triggers to deal 1 to him. In his main phase, he activates the One Ring to draw 2. He plays Plateau as land for turn. He casts the 5th Ranger Captain of the game. It resolves and Dan searches up a Mockingbird. Ogma triggers to gain a life and draw a card. Dan pays 2 to cast Polywog Prodigy. At this point, Dan asks if he can cast them in the other order, and the table agrees. This is so Polywog would trigger to evolve when he casts Ranger Captain. Dan then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. Cammy activates Wishclaw Talisman, searching up a card and giving Wishclaw back to Tyler, as Dan has a full grip and a One Ring. Cammy casts Underworld Breach. John responds with a Lightning Bolt, targeting Dan's Ranger Captain. The table explodes at the audacity as Polywog triggers to draw. Dan refuses to let John get what he wants and refuses to crack his Ranger Captain, letting it die to Lightning Bolt. John then casts Force of Negation, exiling Phyrexian Metamorph as an additional cost. Under Teferi, no one can respond, and Breach is countered and exiled. Cammy then casts Dauthi Voidwalker, and somehow the board gets even more inhospitable to wins. She casts a Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer, and passes the turn. John untaps, and in his draw step, he takes 1 from Mana Vault. He plays a Hallowed Fountain as land for turn, into play untap, paying 2 life. John casts Delny, Streetwise Lookout. It resolves, and he goes to combat. He swings Bruse at Cammy, and Malcolm and Ogma at Tyler. Bruse triggers to give Malcolm Double Strike and Lifelink. Cammy blocks Bruse with Ragavan, and they go to damage. Tyler takes first strike, and Malcolm triggers twice through Delny. He then takes regular damage, and Malcolm triggers twice again. In his second main phase, John activates the +1 loyalty ability of Teferi. He then decides he's just on the beats plan and overloads a Cyclonic Rift for the 2nd time this game. The table groans as all non-land, non-John permanents are bounced to hand again. John then taps out to recast Drannith Magistrate from exile. He then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Verdant Catacombs as land for turn. He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a scrub land. Ogma triggers twice under Delny to gain 2 life and draw 2. Tyler casts My Rel, Shield of Argive. Needing a blocker under Delny, Tyler then casts Goblin Engineer. It enters and triggers, searching up a Relic of Legends into his grave. Ogma triggers twice to gain 2 and draw 2. He then casts Dragon's Rage Channeler. With that, Tyler passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. He then casts Mana Vault. He then casts the One Ring to hide behind his Wall of Protection yet again. John responds with a Mindbreak Trap. Dan goes to respond when John points out the Teferi. The One Ring is exiled, and Dan moves on with his life. He casts a Polywog Prodigy. He then casts Mockingbird with X equals 2. It resolves and enters as another copy of Ranger Captain of Eos. Ranger Captain and Polywog trigger. Polywog gets a counter, and then Dan searches up an Esper Sentinel to hand. Ogma triggers twice to gain 2 life and draw 2. With that, Dan passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Flooded Strand as land for turn. She recasts Dauthi Voidwalker and passes the turn. John untaps and draws. In his draw step, he takes 1 from Mana Vault. Dan sacrifices Ranger Captain in the draw step to lock John out this turn. John responds with a Path to Exile, targeting My Rel. My Rel is exiled, and Tyler declines the search. Ranger Captain's ability then resolves. John finally moves to his main phase. He dashes a Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. He then goes to combat. John swings Ragavan at Cammy, Bruse, Malcolm, and Ranger Captain at Dan, and Ogma, Drannith, and Delny at Tyler. Bruse triggers to give Ragavan Double Strike and Lifelink. Tyler blocks Engineer to Ogma, and then Dan blocks Polywog to Bruse. Cammy takes first strike, and Ragavan and Malcolm both trigger twice due to Delny, making 4 treasures and exiling a land and an Arcane Signet off the top of her library. They all take regular damage, and Ragavan and Malcolm both trigger twice again to make 4 treasures and exile a land and Toxic Deluge. In his second main phase, John activates the +1 ability of Teferi. Drowning an advantage, and still unable to piece together a win under Ranger Captain, John passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He recasts Wishclaw Talisman. It resolves, and Tyler pays a mana to activate Goblin Engineer, sacrificing Wishclaw Talisman to return Relic of Legends to the battlefield. Tyler taps it for blue to cast his Praetor's Grasp card, which is Mnemonic Betrayal. Of course, Tyler can't do this under Drannith, but the entire table failed to notice with how long this game has gone. John responds with a Flare of Duplication. It resolves, and John copies Mnemonic Betrayal, exiling his opponent's graveyards. John can cast sorceries at flash speed due to Teferi. He casts Tyler's Beseech the Mirror, sacrificing Mana Vault to bargain it. He searches up a Glenhorn Buccaneer into exile, casting it for free. It resolves, and John casts Tyler's Gamble. It resolves, and he searches up a card to hand and randomly discards Curious Obsession. John casts Snap, targeting Dauthi. It returns to hand, and John untaps 2 lands. He then casts Wheel of Fortune. Wheel resolves, and everyone discards their hand and draws 7. John discarded 4, so Glenhorn triggers 8 times due to Delny. Dan and Tyler die as Malcolm triggers 16 times to make treasures. With that, John lets the turn pass to Cammy. Cammy untaps and draws. Determined to not go out without a fight, she casts an Orcish Bowmasters. It enters and pings John for 1. Cammy casts Diabolic Intent, sacrificing her Orc army as an additional cost. John responds with a Fierce Guardianship. Cammy can't respond, and Intent is countered. Cammy finally resigns to her fate and passes the turn. John untaps and swings everything at Cammy, blowing her to bits, and with that, after 2 Cyclonic Rifts, 3 Wheels, 5 Ranger Captains, and an incalculable number of misplays, John wins the game. So, what did we learn today? Archivist of Ogma is a pretty good advantage engine if the game goes until the end of time. Also, Jeskai really needs some better closers. If you have any tips for the video, leave them below. Subscribe if you feel like it. Until next time, keep making value plays.
Yeah, that's good.
Dude, you always have the exile shit. It's gone forever, brother. Oh, man.
Well, that fucks me.
I was hoping to do that on my turn and protect a Winnetip. Probably because you stopped 3 Winnetips for me in a row, so I have to get you back.
Psych Rift. Overload Psych Rift.
Oh, Crack Ranger. That would be so
I can ruin this game.
Psych Rift again!
And again! Jessica's will targeting you.
Actually, when you target me, I'll crack LED.
Hey, that's super fair.
I got nothing else, brother.
Yeah, we got him, boys! Spoiled his plan again! Dude, just let me get us out of here. Fuckers. I don't want to save Tyler.
Save
What?
me?
Save him?
Dude, I just
This
had
is
to
a
give up
plot twist.
everything.
I know, Time Twister.
Yo, actually, I was going to want to try to win my turn. I was really hoping you didn't cast Ranger.
Yeah, I know you have the Savines, you bitch.
I have Relic and I have Altar.
Yeah, very cool.
Instantly win. And somehow he still has another Ranger Captain. I know if I push, Dan will sit right behind me. I got nothing. Passes?
No, I promise you I don't.
Okay.
I don't like that.
John, I'm sorry you can't
Only
beat
you
my
can
ass
stop
to death next turn.
Yeah, you're good. I feel like you're just
Where it's like so
feel
obvious.
like I've done
Everybody
it
like
away.
hates you. You're the threat. But you
I've
can't
literally
do anything.
tutored like 3 times, and I don't know if it's my colors or my body, but I just feel so weak.
You can-
Dude, Dranath is so good. Why is John so fucking good at this game? Knowing to go get Dranath. So I'm passing. So sad.
Underworld Breach.
I'll respond to Breach. Bolt Dan's Ranger Captain.
That seems so unnecessary. John
Let it die,
clearly,
man.
John clearly wants.
Let it die so John has to crack his Ranger.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck it.
This guy's trying to game the system, dude. Let it happen, Dan. He thinks he's cool.
That's good.
Alright, Ranger Captain dead? Yep.
We are getting out of this game, baby.
I promise we're not. I can't believe I've overloaded 2 Psych Rifts and I'm no closer to winning. In fact, that's an embarrassing failure of deck building. You're in BT.
Whoa, Dan. Blown out.
What the frick, John?
You can't respond. You're interfering.
Yo, Dan.
You untap that land,
bud.
bitch.
Fine. And it's a Ranger Captain.
Great job.
Awesome.
I'm not going to play your deck for you.
Bro, fine. I'll crack Ranger. Yep.
I'm drawing.
Dan keeps Ranger Captaining me.
Sorry.
It's Dan's
I
fault.
saw you doing the same cards over and over. And I wanted to join in.
If you got the Dranath, I'll Ranger Captain him again.
He's been screwing my turn up every turn for the last 18 turns.
That's
I'll
like
tell
the
you that.
only game actions we've been taking is fucking each other over.
But it's not even you guys. It's literally been John specifically that ruining my life for every turn.
What's he gonna do? Stop you?
Yeah, big
Alright,
baby.
thanks. Alright, I'm untapping. Alright, thank
Well,
you.
actually, I have more things I
Holy
can
shit,
do.
alright.
You saw my hand.
We're rushing her.
Damn.
Unreal, honestly.
He's a judge.
We wanted to get
No,
lunch.
I'm
He's
not.
like time bullying.
I'm gonna need you to respect Cammy's turn.
Alright.
You can't do nothing to me.
Okay. You die.